July 13th, voted to forward you the attached proposed lease. We are requesting that a committee be set up to discuss the proposed lease, which the mayor did that at our council meeting back in August, I believe is when he put it on the docket, so we were assigned here. I also have, I'm not going to, well, I will read it into record. I have the Planning Commission report, which was requested by the mayor during the council meeting, and it's to the mayor, dated August 31st, 2010, for the Planning Commission, reference 8-24, referral August 2010, agenda item number 6, proposed airport lease, Westcon Aviation, LLC. The Planning Commission has received a request from the City Council for a report pursuant to Connecticut General Statutes, sections 8-24, regarding the above referenced items. At the August 25th, 2010 meeting, the Planning Commission made a motion to give this a positive recommendation, subject to the review and approval of said lease by the Corporation Council and the specific conditions contained therein, requiring the lessee to obtain all land use approvals necessary to construct or occupy the building in accordance with applicable zoning regulations, and that's from Arnold Finelli, their chairman. So we have that positive recommendation moving forward from the Planning Commission. We also have, and I'll turn this over to you, Les, we have, and I believe you have a copy of the, that's not a copy of the, does everybody have a copy of the appraisal? We have the appraisal, which was done for us by O'Neill Duffy and Company here in Danubury, on the property, and I'll turn it over to Les to bring us up to speed on that appraisal and where we stand on that.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. The Aviation Commission, as part of its motion recommending this lease to you, had asked that an appraisal be commissioned by the city so that the council could consider a suggested value and its considerations of what to charge for the rent for this property. So Paul's office commissioned the appraisal for $2,000 to do the review, and that's the review you have. I haven't, it's the first I've seen the appraisal myself. It's not significant with respect to the lease itself. You guys set the rent based on the appraisal, whatever other factors you want to include in the mix. The appraisal will be forwarded to the Director of Finance. That's another condition that the Commission has established, that the Finance Department review this as well. The Finance Director is out of town. He will at some point get a copy of this and review it to give you some information. The Commission did review a proposed lease that has a proposed 30-year term and a 30-year renewal term, 60 years total, 30 base, 30 renewal. Again, there's blank space for the amount of the lease that the council will establish. The lease is fairly standard. Over the years, the council has approved this lease format. The terms have been varied on what the council's review is, what it wants to do. As you said, Mr. Chairman, the Planning Commission has given a positive recommendation to the lease, and so based on these, so in light of these conditions, what you need to do is to review the request for this operator. And now keep in mind, and Paul can explain, or others can explain in more detail, but the property that's being leased is the front property. The city owns this property. It's about 1.5 acres. Right now there are airplane tie-downs on this property. The property has been leased for many years to Sadler Aviation. Westcon Aviation proposes to purchase the assets, the business of Sadler Aviation, take over their fixed-based operator permits, do some beneficial construction work on the site, and then negotiate a new lease for the front piece, more adjacent to the airport that the city owns. So they own their own property, and then there's also a lease property that the city, if the council approves it, would be leasing to the firm. So it's really two parts to this. See, Don has a map. So yeah, but that's kind of the
right here.
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's the overall picture. We have the lease proposal, a draft, and then we have the appraisal, from which you folks will derive the rent.
A couple of quick questions on what you said. The Sadler Aviation lease that we currently have, do we have the figures that we're currently getting on that? Do you know what we're getting on that?
Yeah, it's $5,100 plus CPI. I'm not sure if it's adjusted.
I think it's up to about 5,500. I think the current, 54 something. It's up to a couple hundred.
Okay, so that answers that. And to you, Les, 30-year plus 30-year, is this something that's common? It seems like an awful lot of years. Is it something that commonly we do when it comes to...
Airport leases in the past have ranged from 5 or 8 years up to 25 years. There are a couple of leases, I think, one of which just expired recently that had 25 plus a 10, I think. So it's the high end. That's, you know, it's 60 is very unusual. But that's 30 plus 30. It's at the high end, put it that way.
Through Chairman Les, is there provision in the lease for increases in rent over time on renewals, or is that not a common something that would be included in the lease?
There is an attachment which provides for a 5-year renewal, a 5-year adjustment based on a CPI calculation, and then if it doesn't work out later in the year, there's provision for some additional appraisal. It accounts for each 5-year term.
Okay.
So amount of adjustment. And again, just a word on that. That adjustment schedule is as proposed by the applicants. You can do something different. You can just put a fixed number on it and do something else. So that's what their proposal is based upon the best way they view the business enterprise. Just to leave it out.
Then one more question for you. With the Director of Finance not being here and not having the opportunity yet to have reviewed this, are we going to be able to close this meeting tonight? If we come up with a dollar figure? And if not, how does that affect us as far as the time frame of what the petitioner is looking for?
Well, I'll let them speak to the time frame they have, but the council did ask the Department of Finance to be present at the meeting so they could advise you regarding the values and other related issues. I don't know what issues they might have. I'm pretty sure David Sandler, the way I know him, he'd want to review the appraisal and want to give you some information about the appraisal, probably. I don't know what kind of analysis. He's a guy that does a lot of data charts and whatnot, so he may want to review that and get back with you on that. Alternatively, you could make a conditional recommendation of some kind.
Well, yeah, that's what my thought was, is that we make a if we decide we come to an agreement this evening, we make our recommendation, push it forward to David, and then if any adjustments do need to be made, we can make them on the floor during the council meeting. Alrighty. I guess we'll turn it over to, and you have any questions?
I do, yeah. Through the chair to Paul. What's the property being used for now? What's Sadler been doing with it for the last however many years?
If you look, Councilman, you'll see a picture there of aircraft parking.
It's just tied up.
Solely aircraft parking.
Okay, to follow that up through Les, what does the lease stipulate they can and cannot do with that property?
It doesn't stipulate what they can or cannot do. It's whatever is approved by the airport administrator.
Okay, so Paul would have the administrator have the final say on it. I have a constituent came up to me the other day and was showing some amount of concern about the future of Sadler, or in this case, the future of the new occupant, and what their intentions are with the airport. The particular concern was a noise issue and a microjet issue. And I said, I have no idea. My assumption was they're going to be doing the same thing that Sadler was doing, but I mean, they may not be. And if that's the case, I'd like to hear about it now. If I can, through the chair, get the petitioner to talk a little bit about his business and where he sees that going in the next 60 years, if we go out that far, which I just up front, I'm very uncomfortable with going that far in that lease. I'd be much more comfortable with, say, a 50 and a 10 or a 20 and a 5 or something like that. But be that as it may, if the petitioner would speak on the future of his business, that would be appreciated.
First, on the 60 year and 30 years, there's a reappraisal, and there's an issue on this property that the city has over Sadler that the council may not be aware of. But there's a deed restriction that restricts this property to, which is different than the other leases on the airport. None of the other properties fall into this, but basically, if you take Reliant, for example, who's private property like Sadler, and the city doesn't renew the lease, Reliant can take that hangar, turn it into self-storage in aisle 40 and continue on. The city has a deed restriction on the Sadler property, so it can only be used for aviation. So if you don't have a lease to have access to the airport, then you basically have, the property has no value because you can't do anything. It's aisle 40, but you couldn't do self-storage because it's restricted. Unless you can find an aviation prospect that wants to store only aviation, and technically the property is restricted. So that's the main reason that we're asking for or the other thing we had asked is that we were going to come before the council and said that deed restriction be lifted.
Right. So you're just saying that you're worried that at some point the lease expires and you have to evacuate the business.
My concern buying this property in 16 years, if I don't have another lease, it has no value because of this deed restriction. So that was the first incentive to come in for a new lease.
Well, it's good to know.
Yeah.
The other thing is, for purposes of financing, my client's going to be doing plans to do extensive renovations to the existing hangars, which requires money, and lenders look more favorably upon a long-term lease arrangement, especially in light of the restriction.
Okay.
After just leaving the bank at 4:30 to come here, their biggest troubling thing was the 16 years left on the current lease to come up with any substantial money. The other thing is that just so you know, I don't have it with me, and Robin didn't have it. The executive T hangars lease is I'm not sure the term might be 4 years, maybe 220s or 320s. I'm not sure. It is a long lease.
Actually, you're right, it is a longer lease. Paul Estefan for the record, airport administrator. It is a longer lease, but they built from scratch, meaning they went into unapproved land, they petitioned, they built the hangars, they laid it out, and they turned around with permission and they turned it into contract. So it's entirely different. Your fee simple and that's city property to begin with.
I mean, our biggest issue is the deed restriction. Remove the deed restriction and we'd be happy.
Well, yeah, I think that's beyond the scope of this.
Right. So we took this approach. We felt this was an easier approach to take.
If you could talk a little bit about the business and where you're going with it. How many flights you're expecting to make, what kind of jets, things like that?
Well, we're not planning to, the plan is not to Sadler currently is pretty much piston aircraft and, I don't know, Paul, I don't think there's any jets.
No.
And I don't, the hangars and the size of the site just doesn't support, the jet, the storage of jets and stuff like that. It would, we run some numbers and you take them, the way you're able to fit the number of smaller airplanes and the rent you can generate versus one Citation jet or something like that, it doesn't make sense. And that's why when you look at this appraisal, I did a quick look and I noticed they have Reliance deal where Reliant has the ramp space and can deal with jets and jet fuel and have an opportunity. They have a better, a broader market to support the rent. It's a limited, it's pretty much it's not going to be expanded. We're not increasing the size of the land. If we can get all the financing in place and build the hangars, it'll actually be a lot cleaner. If we say here's that pile of dirt, and then we're in good shape. And that's not far out of that's on the radar screen. I mean, if I can get Sayers to eventually talk to us about buying that, maybe.
That's sure. Okay.
I got him. The council may not be aware of this. I know Les is, but there was an encroachment of 600 feet of dirt, 5 feet on the property, and he moved the dirt.
It wouldn't surprise me.
No, he moved it.
No, I'm saying it wouldn't surprise me if he was a little over the line.
But we got it done because his deal was also contingent on that encroachment had to be cleaned up. And I went and talked. I'm in the same business. I'm in the construction business, and he wasn't. I think he doesn't want to burn any bridges, and I've done business with him.
Okay. Continuing that through the chair, Paul, could you talk about what Sadler's been doing for the last couple of years? Because I'm not really familiar with the business.
Basically, he has one operator that does aircraft repairs, Act Emma, which has been approved by the Airport Commission, with a sub-licensee through Sadler, and basically nothing after that. And he has to hold 2 permits as required by the current minimum standards. He holds a fuel permit and a repair permit, and that's it.
So no charter, he just fixes planes.
Fixes planes.
And is that essentially what you're planning on doing?
Yeah, the difference between us and Sadler being is they were going to pay our taxes. Okay? We're going to pay our airport fees, so the city's not going to have to chase us for that stuff. And I think we'll probably sell more fuel than they do. They're just not. They don't have anybody there full time. We're going to put a full-time person there. And, that place where, the incident that happened several months ago, hopefully did not happen under our watch, because we're going to have somebody there,
Which
that
was?
place.
We had somebody, whenever you go on an airport ramp, I tell people do not touch propellers, because you don't know if it's hot or cold, meaning if you touch the propeller, you could start the engine if certain things are not attached on the engine itself. Well, the gentleman went and pulled the propeller, and it started the airplane, and the airplane took off.
With nobody in it?
Nobody in it.
And where was the gentleman? Did he get out of the
It's all
way?
right.
Okay.
He got hurt a little bit.
It
Oh, he
cost
did?
him 2 airplanes and a fuel truck, but
Right.
So they sort of rolled down the runway and smacked into a couple things?
No, he stayed on the ramp and damaged 2 or 3 airplanes and demolished a fuel truck plus his own airplane.
So the Sadler place, there's a manager there. It's just sort of like people pay rent and they're out on the ramp by themselves, and there's no controls. We're going to run it more like the rest of the FBOs do.
And just so we're clear, you're not going to be flying any planes out there. You're not running a charter business, a plane for hire business. You're not doing any of that. People aren't going to be able to hop on a plane and go to the vineyard.
Well,
from here.
what permits did we elect? I don't know.
You have, currently Sadler has repair and fuel, and that's it.
But we made an
Like
election.
fuel and charter.
We did fuel and
Yeah.
charter.
Oh, you do some charter?
That's what
Well,
your letter said.
They're asking.
Well, here's and if this, I guess.
So that's a little bit different from Sadler's, then.
Let me say that Sadler, prior to 85, did have a charter operator on that
Okay.
particular location, and they had a flight school into the 90s. Now, if you have a flight school permit, it also allows you to be a charter operator. It also allows you to have a flight school. It also allows you to have a flying club. So, and it also has you to have, allows you to have scheduled air carriers.
Let me say.
So
that.
there's no differentiation between one or the other. They can do either or. But with a charter operator, they have to meet a certain criteria as established by the FAA. They have to have it licensed. The pilots have to be licensed. The mechanic has to be certified. The aircraft has to be certified. And there's a tremendous amount of expense on the maintenance of the aircraft and the use of the airplane for charter. So it's not like you're going to run out and make $1 million. There's a lot going on to charter.
Yeah, but why get the license if you're not going to do it?
Well, if the person gets the license, it's generally for a twin-engine airplane. It's currently what we currently have at that location to begin with. There's no law that says even Paul Estefan can go out and get a charter license and can't be stopped. So,
Yeah, but I don't have to give you the lease, though.
true, you don't. But let me remind the commission, or the council, that back in the 90s, the Common Council then approved, through a federal grant, to rehab this ramp at a cost of $1.4 million. So we're under obligation for the FAA to use this as delineated by the grant assurances to park aircraft. Also included in there was the right to bring the city's 18-inch sewer main through that property out to Wallingford Road so that the community did not have to go out and condemn and take, etc. But also On the Sandler side of the issue, we hooked up through the federal grant with permission of the FAA all of the utilities needed to operate the toilets and the sinks. So they were attached with permission of the FAA, and the fees were paid to the city of Danbury, I might add, for the hookups of all those facilities in the 3 buildings that they currently have. So there were trade-offs, but the biggest factor is that we have to maintain it in the configuration that it is today, and that's basically it.
Which is a repair shop.
No, it is for parking and repair.
Right, but the business itself will be...
The business itself is not done on our property.
It's done in the Sadler building, gotcha.
That's right.
I think your concern...
Let me just keep everybody
And-
talking one at a time here.
And, if I may, Mr. Chairman, and I might add that the deed restriction is very clear. The town of Danbury says it has to be, because we assumed the town of Danbury in 1965. The town of Danbury is very clear in its deed, and I'm doing this from memory now, so I could be off a little bit, that it can only be used for aeronautical purposes. It can't be used for any, I'm talking the fee simple property.
Right, this is outside the scope of the lease.
Right.
This
It's
is
outside-
Sadler's own, privately owned
Right, so I'm
property.
giving you the
It's
whole
deed-restricted.
scenario here. So one basically has to go with the other.
In question to Les, if what he does on that property, as long as it's aviation based, whether it's a charter service, if he's pulling the proper permits and it's properly zoned for it, unless we want to make stipulations in his lease, I don't see that.
No, my
I
issue
don't
is
see
really
that we have
simple. I'm ready tonight to roll over the Sadler lease to the petitioner. The issue that I'm hearing now is that people are worried that this is going to ramp up airport traffic. That's the issue I'm hearing. With a charter license, that's a business on
In that regard, let me say this. The reason, let me tell you why we elected the charter license, because the individual that we're going to bring here as the manager is currently at the airport in the charter business. So it's not changing if somebody's moving from somewhere else. We're not in this for the charter business. I own, me and 3 other individuals own 6 airplanes. So they're all over the place. And so it's not, you're not going to have an increased traffic. And as far as, and even if we did get in the charter business, which we still are permitted to do, that's not our goal. Like I said, it's the person that's coming in as the manager that's going to prevent the airplane from flying in a fuel truck. He's in that business currently at Danbury Airport, and he's moving somewhere else. It's a small business. But even that, when somebody calls charter an airplane from Danbury to Nantucket, if we're in the business and Reliance, it doesn't increase. There's only the user, so it's not like we're going to develop or create more traffic. There naturally would be maybe a little bit more if we did marketing and stuff like that, but in the end, I think the increase in traffic is insignificant. But that's not our goal. Our goal, we didn't select charter for that. We selected charter because of who's coming to run the place. Is it currently in that business at the airport?
Thank you.
The other thing, Mr. Chairman, is add to that, on page 7 of your document, you will see the airport traffic count for the years 2006, 7, 8, and 9. I bring this to your attention because you'll see that the highest peak year was 2 years ago in 2008.
Yeah, so
I mean, it's not like we're
really low. When Rob and I went to high school nearby the airport, the traffic counts were probably 4 times higher in the 70s.
easy
300,000 a year.
200.
Yeah.
196, 198, 200,000.
Did I say 70s? I meant the 90s.
Yeah. Correct that for the record.
It's on TV too.
Well, I misspoke, folks.
So, plus, keep in mind that even if he was charter, he takes off and they're gone. They're not coming back for quite a while. If it was a flight school, then I would say, okay.
Flight school.
Yeah.
Right, you understand the concern of the people in the
Yeah.
6. They're looking at more, what do you call them, TNLs, whatever.
Right. Yes, take off.
More is more. I mean, more is not less. So.
Yes, and I hope I answered everybody's
Thank
questions.
Question for Les, just to satisfy my own curiosity. The deed restrictions he's currently looking to move past, what is the process for that? That's nothing, we wouldn't deal with that at all, correct?
Right.
That would be done.
That's out in the future. And that's a risk that's out there for people in the future.
And also for the record, I don't know if you have it, John Ashkar, the chairman of the Aviation Commission, is with us this evening.
Late but present.
What are you?
Said late but present.
He's late for president. There
Sorry,
you go.
Chairman, I was speaking to my client when you asked that question. Could you, I didn't...
No, I was just curious, for my own curiosity, the deed restriction, if it's something that would come before this group at all, and it's not, it would have to go.
I think it's separate ad hoc.
Oh, separate ad hoc, yeah.
I would think, right?
It's been out there for forever, and it's not really an issue for this.
If we get this if we get this long-term
It's
lease.
a risk that everyone lives with.
Yeah, and I mean, clearly it would be, to me, notwithstanding the feelings of the petitioner, it would have to be an extraordinarily powerful incentive for the city to give up that deed restriction. I mean, the airport's in a precarious enough position as it is, surrounded now by residential property. When it was built, obviously, it was either nothing there or some industry farms and things like that.
Well, being that it's not our case,
I'm
let's...
simply saying that
Yeah, I
the
agree.
pressure is growing to shut down the airport.
I'll just make sure when they're assigning that ad hoc, I'm not on.
Or for the petitioner, the risk is that, if they're looking for a long-term lease, this is something that's facing them as a potential issue.
So once my kids aren't around, I'm not going to worry about it. 60 years being
Okay, so are we comfortable at plugging in the number that was proposed during the appraisal?
I know parking for cars, I know that kind of stuff for residences. I don't know a damn thing about parking for airplanes. I have no idea what these values are. I don't know if they've gone up, gone down, or they've moved laterally. I would like some input from Paul on that, and also from David. And this speaks to your point raised earlier. Can we meet again? Are we at a time limit? This guy just got out of a bank, meeting at 4:30 this afternoon. I imagine he's probably moving, rapidly to some sort of conclusion. They may want us to decide this tonight. I'm a little uncomfortable doing that without hearing.
If I could, in thinking about it, because I knew a couple hours ago that David wasn't going to be able to make it, and it was my thought that if we do not make a motion tonight, that we'll reconvene a week from now. Because I want to get it done before, nothing can be done before the next council meeting anyways, so as far as the final vote goes. So if we can get David to take a peek at it, we can finish up what we need to get a better understanding of what we need to get for tonight, and then meet again next week. And close it out then.
If I may, the value is great that we have a land value for the property, but what I need to know is really a rental value for slips.
And it's hard
what do you call them, slips or?
Well, he has it here in the appraisal.
Yeah, it is in the appraisal.
Yeah.
But
I was going to say that.
Okay.
But that's the thing, we just got these tonight, so it's very hard for us to make a decision like that.
And then where is that compared to what we've been getting from Salvo? So that would be obviously the next question.
Yeah, well, if it's 60, he's getting 55, so it's like a 10%
Got on
ballpark.
page 24, the tie-in.
Well, that's when he paid.
Does that?
That's when he paid.
But,
Well, that's not my...
So you've got paved and unpaved, okay.
Right.
yeah, the only problem here is I know the rents are 85 on the grass and 110 on the...
Okay, so we've got 101.35. This is what he concludes the assessment is, but the actual present rents are 85 and 110. Okay, that's good to know. A couple of things, if I may, through the chair, to I guess I'm going to put one out to Paul and put one out to Les. Who's responsible for maintenance? You've got some paved area here. If the pavement breaks up, are we on the hook to repave, or is the leaser?
We do all the snow plowing maintenance, it's not just the money comes in, there's...
New pavement? Would you be responsible for new pavement?
No, because we're the landowner.
Okay.
It would be like any landlord tenant operation on the new pavement, because the pavement is a very specialized pavement. It's not your normal pavement mix that you would use for a highway or a parking lot or for a driveway.
What's the present condition?
Very good. We have to do some crack filling on it, which we're hopefully going to get scheduled before winter sets in.
Okay. One last question through the chair to Les. Well, let's talk about taxes. We went through a major issue that slowed an ad hoc down recently. It put us behind 6 months to a year on this issue. Where are we on that issue?
Taxes are included.
They are.
The assessor can assess, and the tenant agrees to pay taxes as assessed, whatever those are.
On top of the lease fees?
It's a separate
separate
billing.
quarterly.
It's like a tax,
All right,
it's like a
okay.
tax payment.
And the petitioners agree to that?
Yes.
Okay.
That is common practice now.
It's common practice. The assessor assesses all airport tenants, except it's actually in this lease. Other leases that are older are absent, but she still assesses by operation of law. The other thing, and Attorney Khan is counsel for the plaintiff, and I want to promote the plaintiff's enterprise, but I have to say that the commission has been very in front and center about upgrading the operators at the airport. You folks not too long ago approved the lease for the old New England aircraft facility. That facility has been combined with the adjacent facility to make one operation. Chris's business, from all accounts, seems to be a vast improvement over what's there. The existing operator, unfortunately, has had some payment problems. I think that was attractive to the commission. Seeing Chris had Robin had a professional architect out there too. So in addition to the rent and the taxes, there's some other benefits that may be accruing to the city that you don't see in every document. So I just wanted to mention that, again, not to promote the business, but just to say to you guys that whatever the rent is, there are some other features coming in.
If I may, the improvements to the property certainly will increase the taxes to the south of the property.
Then Reliance brand new, obviously, so we're moving in the right direction.
Okay. Anything else, Tom? John, we like these guys?
Just for information purposes, for the chair, we weren't terribly impressed with 30-30 either, but we bent a little because they need it for financing. And the improvements that they're proposing, that they brought before the commission, made it very attractive, because what's there now is a mess. And really the commission's purpose in life is to try to, as Les said, improve the conditions in the airport and try to make the airport better, more comfortable, and not so much of an eyesore. And the big thing that we looked at was his relationship with Sears and with private vernacular, and trying to get that mess cleared up too. Eventually, if he buys that property from Sears and gets that dirt out of there, it certainly will make a much nicer approach to the city of Danubury. As far as traffic is concerned, I don't foresee any more of a problem than we have right now. And I'm totally aware of the concerns that the city has with the traffic that's on the airport. And if we thought that they were going to bring in a jet service or something that was going to take, increase the noise levels way above what's presently occurring, we would be concerned about it. But I don't foresee that.
Mr. Taylor.
Mr. Chair.
No reflection on the petitioners, but I know in the past, before I was on the council, we've dealt with issues with proposed improvements, proposed things that have not been followed through on. That would be a concern of mine, that we would have some kind of stipulation in that agreement that what they propose would actually be mandated to be carried out.
And I think, where's that report from the planning commission? I think they made a
If
statement.
I may, through the chair, a question to Don. You're talking about his improvements outside the scope of the tie-down situation, or are you talking about just what he's going to be using the lease property?
I think they're general overall improvements to the entire property.
Yeah, because obviously the lease wouldn't speak to anything beyond the tie-downs. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, with all due respect, I don't think we would want to be in a position of being obligated to make specified improvements.
Yeah, I don't know that we're in a position also to put those kind of stipulations in. I think we could. I mean, we could definitely force it down their throats, but I think that with the Aviation Commission looking over their shoulder and with them having to go for permits for everything and getting it all done through City Hall, I'm sure that the planning department and zoning department's going to be on top of all that. So I've dealt with several leases I'm never comfortable with. put in
Yeah, there are,
stipulations.
there's some issues out there. We met with zoning, with the floodplain and stuff. Some of the stuff that we're asking, maybe there may be some limitations and have to be scaled back. So, as a result of just the floodplain issues, and so I wouldn't want the biggest thing on this lease. Yeah, there's a big investment that gets you through like 30 years, but the deed restriction is the biggest reason we're asking for the longer term. And in 30 years, it goes. First of all, the city can get out of the lease anytime they want. And all we ask is, you want to crush the lease, you want to get out for convenience, just then the deed restriction comes along. In 30 years, there's a reappraisal. It's just more of a commitment. I mean, it's not. I mean, there is ways out. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like in 20 years, 10 years. In 30 years, it actually gets a complete review, and we have to agree on new terms.
The rent also resets after 15 years.
Okay. All right, so why don't we do this? We've got, we know we want this to get in front of the finance, director of finance, so why don't we motion to move this to, motion to delay?
Just continue it.
Motion to continue.
Yeah, I'll make that motion, but before I do that, can I ask a lesser question? What's the, Robin, what's the transfer clause in here if you sell the business? Does the lease go with the new business? This 60-year thing has got me a little flummoxed, and I'm just wondering, is it that it becomes part of the actual asset of the business, so that if you had to sell it or refinance it, you would be able to market the lease too? Are we including a transfer clause in this?
No, no transfer clause. That's a business asset of theirs, not of ours.
Okay.
So this is an independent vehicle. If they sell their business, we have to deal with it either if they negotiate as part of their business assets this lease, and the city agrees to the assignment of that lease.
So
it
would essentially have to come back to us.
Yeah.
Not you, the commission has to.
Well, the city.
Well, somebody.
The
I think
airport commission goes, reviews
the commission, right? The commission has to approve.
Somebody's going to be looking at it from the city.
Yeah.
Okay.
Now what? Because before you, there's 2 or 3 issues quick just to advise us on. One is the 30 plus 30 is the term that the council at least wishes to consider at this time.
Yeah, I mean, we'll take a solid look at it, and we'll have the opportunity to discuss it next week also. But yeah, 30 and 30.
And as far as the renewal clause, there are some leases that have a straight percentage increase every term, every 5 years. This one has a calculation to be done. David will look at that and will advise on how that works. There are a couple of past leases where it hasn't been easy to decipher some of these because
you mean the attorneys wrote a tough one? Is that what you mean?
well, we had one in particular, Paul, that it was worse than that, Paul. It was worse. It was worse than that. It was as if it was one of those things where it looks like one thing, but then you look at it again, it's something else. So the committee may wish, after David's input, may wish to review that. It may be easier to put a straight percentage on it. You may want to go with this, but sometimes when you have appraisers coming back in years to come, it gets old. So that's something to consider.
Well, David will give us those answers.
Yeah, and what's wrong with the CPI? I mean,
That's what's in
Not
there.
necessarily. It depends on how at a glance you want the adjustments to be made. You may not know. You may want a higher rent fixed at the beginning for those terms, as opposed to CPI.
hey, listen, this appraisal was what, $2,000? Paul?
Yes.
I'd like to avoid that fee if I can. I mean, I'm comfortable with a simple CPI, up or down. That's pretty fair.
Yeah, I'm just saying that
Okay,
in
I
2
got it.
leases you guys have approved before, you had a 12% adjustment.
Right. But that's
5 years.
that's how they presented to us also.
And
So-
right, and then there was an appraisal at some point. So it was a little different. So if you want to make them uniform, I just want to throw it out to you that
Okay.
this is not a typical adjustment
Yeah.
for the.
Well, give me the week to deal with David on this, and when we come back next week, we'll have a better understanding of that. But at this point, I don't know that I want to jump away from the way it's currently written.
Mr. Chairman, just for the members present, I have forwarded the copy of the current lease and the proposed lease and the appraisal to Mr. St. Hilaire. So it's in his email box. I also forwarded the documents of the deed, current lease, proposed lease, and appraisal to the FAA for them to take a look at. So those documents are out there right now.
Should we wait for them to come back?
I figure we should know, I would think for the FAA shortly, because we have ongoing conversations with them all the time, and hopefully we'll get that back.
I'll make a motion.
Go ahead.
We continue the meeting to meet in all due haste, say a week from now, if we can.
Yeah, we'll come up with a date as soon as we close the meeting and
that
amongst
we
ourselves.
strongly invited in strong terms the finance person to go over this material with us.
Second?
Motion made and seconded. All in favor?
Mr. Chairman, before you do that, just one other quick thing is that the present lease size is 1.75 acres. I just want to be sure that,
Why are we going smaller?
well, that was an issue that apparently the petitioner has no use of that additional piece. I just want to bring that to your attention. The actual size that was appraised is just about 1.5. So there's
1.45.
so,
And what are they actually leasing?
well, 1 3/4.
No, 1.45.
No, Sadler.
That's what you're looking at.
Presently leasing
Current
one-
Sadler.
Oh, okay.
Right, so if you approve
down
this, it's
on-
slightly
we're down
less,
on four.
there'll be a piece left over that the city will not lease to.
Where's that piece list?
Oh,
Actually, the petitioner is looking to take out a piece here where we have some markings on a taxiway. I think if you open up to the page that has the aerial shot, you will see in there, that's on page
15.
15.
Only markings on the taxiway?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, okay.
it's two-sided cloth.
Yeah. Okay, page
15.
15.
One,
Way ahead.
one.
Okay, one more.
Okay, now where you see where the pointed subject property, you got an arrow there, that's the marking
Okay.
for the taxiway. Then you got a dash yellow line going across. Now, let me explain why that's there. Explained it once before, I guess. When I wrote the grant, at the time that the grant was written, that was an open culvert there. If you look down around the corner
Yeah, I
at
can see
Curtis, you can see that the stream was open.
Yeah.
So from a safety standpoint, the FAA agreed with the airport and said, yes, we should box that in, and we put box culverts.
It's open on
So
both
if
sides.
you look here and here,
Side.
here and here,
Here,
and here
there,
and
and there.
there.
Yep.
That is the least limits that the box culverts go.
Okay.
Meaning that when we did this, we only covered the leased area with the box culverts. The head walls are the beginning and end of the leased area, and the planes were put there. Now, years back, what we used to do, we come down the taxiway, stop the airplane in the middle of the taxiway, and push the airplane back. The FAA said that that procedure had to stop. We could no longer do that. Consequently, the dash line was created so that we cross over, stop the airplane, get out of the airplane safely, and then push it back.
When you stop, you're no longer on the taxiway.
Right, so you're off the taxiway.
You're off the
You've given
taxiway.
yourself a shoulder off the taxiway.
Exactly.
To do
So
what you were
ultimately,
doing
we did
before.
take a piece of the 1.75 way, and that's the reason we're only...
No, we're not taking anything away because the petitioner, I'm not speaking for him, but the impression I got was that he says, I have no use for that. Maybe he doesn't, but I don't agree with him.
And we have a different opinion, because I have one airplane in particular that if there's an airplane parked in that area, you couldn't get by because the wingspan wouldn't, there's numerous airplanes on the airport that would not be able to use this taxiway because of the line is, because I could, I talked to Paul, I don't need to pull over, turn and push back. We can pull in and just pull up to the line. And people don't pull in and push back. It's that area, in order to cross that line, you have to be in communication with the tower.
But once you cross back over into parking your aircraft, you don't have to talk to the tower. And having lived through this now for almost 3 decades, I can tell you that my experience has been that you have to stop on the taxiway to push it back. That was created as a shoulder, and it was created as a safety issue. Nothing more, nothing less. And it was created for the Sadler operation. If you buy the Sadler operation, you also inherit that particular safety issue. That's my
No,
opinion.
because even from this photo, the planes are back far enough that they actually make the swing without.
Right, they're sitting on
They
top of the
cannot
brook.
they cannot be on the other side of that line.
They're sitting on top of the brook.
If I could, for the sake of our debate, let's move on. Let's close this meeting because there is another meeting that's up again, and because we're going to reconvene next week, and we can hash things through at that point. So,
Let me just say, Mr. Chairman,
I know.
you guys just kind of went off the reservation a little bit, waiting on my...
They're out of our league.
Yeah, I just want to say that, with all due respect, I have to go with Paul on this. Paul's going to have to get the last word. So if he says that it's a safety issue and that you need it, I'm going to have to go.
We'll be happy next meeting
Yeah,
to talk
I'm
more
sorry.
about that.
But also be open if we can present a procedure that
Convince
we
Paul.
would
If you can convince Paul, then you've convinced me. But I can't arbitrate this one.
Okay. So we'll discuss that at the next meeting. Motion's made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We're out of here. Okay. Motion to adjourn, please.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye.